Well, hey, today on the show, we have the owner and founder of Noble Goat Design Co. Going to join us and talk a little bit about the creative process in creating a brand. Come on, welcome to the show, Gordon Choate. Gordon, welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Glad to be here.
Thanks, man. Thank you for being on. How's life been lately?
Oh, dude, this year has kind of just been like a survival mode, honestly.
Yeah.
So we just had our second kid.
There it is.
Two under two.
That answers it.
So we have a 18-month-old and a almost 3-month-old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Jeez. So someone who's also been on the show as well is similar of like, having 2 under 2, but yours are like so much closer.
oh, yeah,
Like,
they're tight.
yeah. What is I've asked this question before for somebody else, but like what do you feel like is easier right now? Is it the 18-month-old or the 3-month-old?
Honestly, the 18-month-old. Yeah, she's been great. She's just like being super polite and helpful.
Her manners have just gone through the roof.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's wanting to help out. Me and her have like a super tight bond right now.
That's cool.
Which is great, but also tough because she only wants me. And every time I leave for work, there's a meltdown. But it's like cute in a way.
Well, I feel like that kind of naturally happens, right? Because like I have 2 kids as well, 3 and 1, and like for a while there, our youngest was so dependent upon my wife that like it just makes sense that like I'm spending a lot more time with our 2 than 3-year-old now,
Totally,
and so our bond grows.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
then there comes a moment where it's like, okay, now that he's 1, it's like he needs me a little more.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like actually likes that I'm around.
Yeah,
every now
totally.
and then.
They're not just this little
Yeah.
potato.
Exactly. They're not just like I can hold you and that's about it.
Yeah.
He's starting to like stand up and
Oh, that's
like,
awesome.
kind of take steps.
Yeah.
Which is exciting. It's a little terrifying.
A little bit.
Yeah, because they just
the
get into
leash.
everything, dude. Yeah, dude. So we both married girls from Pennsylvania.
We did. Yeah. They come in flocks.
We make our
apparently.
pilgrimage. Yeah, exactly. It feels like there's a lot of us down here that I can say everyone's wife is from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you? I was gonna make another joke, but probably just stay away from it. Do you make your pilgrimage up there a couple times a year, right?
A few times. Yeah. Sometimes against my will, but
Yeah.
for the fam. Yeah. No. She's super tight knit with her family. Her parents are up there, so honestly, it's a great trip, especially getting away from the Florida heat and the
Dude, 100%.
moistness. Is always a good break for sure. But yeah,
It's the worst word, but the best word to describe it.
it's the only word that
moist.
makes sense.
Yeah, dude. I know some people that would probably just shut off this podcast if we said that word one more time. But yeah, dude, for people who don't know, and yeah, like not just trying to be the old men talking about the weather, but this is like summer is the time to be in Pennsylvania. It is like a Florida winter, actually. You know what I mean? Like where it's like 70s is your day, maybe 80.
Yeah.
If you're lucky or whatever, but just amazing out, you know?
Yeah, I think the Florida heat is just it's different this year. I'm used to it being hot, but I'm like thinking back, I was like, I don't remember being this hot. Like I get out of my truck and walk into the house, and I have to change my shirt.
It's that bad. Yeah.
walking
Are
like
you
30
you
feet.
born and raised Florida? Is that
Yeah,
right? Or-
yeah,
okay.
born and raised here, Lakeland specifically. Yeah,
Wow, that's awesome, man.
local.
Yeah. Have you ever is Lakeland the place you guys want to be for a really long time? That's probably a deep question, but
Yeah, no, I mean, all throughout growing up, I hated it here.
yeah,
It was much smaller than it is now, and everything closed at 8, and there was not really a lot to do. But then, luckily I met my wife here at Southeastern when we went to school.
go fire.
Go Fire, yeah, and her too. She really loves up north and traveling up there and just somewhere where there's seasons. So I think it's always been in the back of our mind to locate somewhere else. But yeah, for the time being, we have a great house and the kids are in a good spot and stuff. And We have a lot of my family, and her sister and stuff lives just
Yeah.
a couple streets away. So everybody's super close
That
here.
is fun.
So it's just
Yeah.
honestly, it just makes sense, and it's a really good situation to be close to everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're going to be here for.
Well, and you don't have to list out like your 5 to 10 year plan
Right.
here on the show tonight, but yeah, I mean, I do get that. Like, we live in such a unique place in Lakeland, and even when I moved here back in 2013, 14 or whatever, it was a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I guess that's maybe just most like thriving cities are growing within a 10-year span, hopefully.
Sure, yeah, hopefully.
But dude, I remember like even the first time I found our main road, like South Florida, like I remember being like, oh man, there's like more out here, you know, especially like going to college and that being kind of your bubble for a while. So yeah, man, I get that though, but it is nice. Like coming back to Pennsylvania, it is nice to have seasons. It's nice to be able to do things like go for a hike, like, you know what I mean? Like an actual real mountains, doing stuff like that. Is there anything else that you guys tend to do up there, like that you can't do down here?
The apple cider donuts. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
it's just not the same here, right?
It's like
It's
fall
fake.
time.
Yeah.
You go like
Yeah.
we go to a Christmas tree farm and pick out a Christmas tree, and it's like the whole Winter Wonderland storybook experience. Where it's like here, if you go pick out a Christmas tree, it's like you go to Publix and they have some outside,
Dude, 100%.
or you go to a tent. Yeah.
Dude, and you're sweating the whole time.
And you're sweating the whole time. Yeah, you can't even wear a hoodie.
We lived up in PA for a little while, and it's so like even just thinking about this now, like the difference between 1 year we bundled up in our coats, not just jackets, like our coats and like, you know, beanies, all that stuff. Went out, got our tree. It was actually snowing, I think, like flurrying while we're getting our tree. It was just kind of magical, right? As opposed to like this past year, we go to Target, you know, and we look for what's on sale.
Yeah.
And we get our tree that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, hey, man, I really want to get into talking about what you do. Like, obviously, I love like talking more like we're friends and we've known each other for a little bit here, but talking more just about what you've gotten into with Noble Goat. Maybe tell us a little bit about what Noble Goat is and how you started it.
Yeah, so I started Noble Goat Design Company back in late 2020 when we all had a little bit more time on our hands. It just kind of started as a creative outlet. I just knew I wanted to do some form of my own thing. I just didn't really have it dialed in on how to execute that in a business structure. So I started, something really simple and on the side, and it was easy, and just kind of a place that I could kind of create my own rules and I offered a little bit of everything. I have kind of an experience in a lot of different creative energy through like photography or drawing, illustration, painting, and then graphic design, and then it just kind of was like this service that I wanted to just offer creative services for people. And over the time, it developed into what it is now, which is a boutique studio offering brand strategy and identity systems.
That's awesome.
Specifically, I'm trying to niche more into clients in the food and beverage industries. So,
Yeah. I feel like maybe someone listening to this, like even for me, since we chatted recently about stuff like that, like, you look at, like, you maybe think somebody listening to this thinks about what you do. It's like, oh, it creates graphics, like quick graphics.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it was like in the beginning, but so much, it sounds like what it's developed into now is like, it's thinking beyond just like, hey, here's a cool image for your business or whatever. It's like, this is like what the story it's telling, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe like how did that develop too? Just like, how did you get to a place where you were like, hey man, there's a little bit more in here that I could be doing?
Yeah, honestly, I was a graphic designer at a church for a little bit right out of college. So I didn't graduate, and because I was like, I'm getting paid to kind of do what I wanted to do anyway. So,
makes sense. Yeah.
So I was like, I might as well just get real world experience. And, that kind of also opened the door to, I was kind of a little bit of everything. I was their main creative. And, I was pretty much just an order taker. I was a graphic designer, and kind of whatever needed to be done. I didn't really have a lot of say in it, but I feel like I had a good eye naturally. And over the course of that, I did, logos and stuff for friends on the side for like, buy me some tacos or buy me a coffee and I'll make you a logo.
Yeah.
And just because I wanted to practice and I wanted to do stuff and see my work out there. And it started to, I guess, become frustrating where I feel like I had this kind of natural kind of talent for making something, look any way that someone wanted it to look. But I started getting frustrated where clients would say one thing and it kind of missed the mark, and a lot of revisions back and forth, and not really knowing how to communicate myself or to ask the right questions of what they're wanting. And I had a friend ask me who wanted, a logo for something, and I made him an option, and he was like, well, what do you think? What do you think it should be? And it was the first time somebody asked me of like what my opinion was about it. And I never really knew how to approach that. So that kind of opened the door to like, how do I price a logo? How do I, understand strategy? How do I understand business? How do I be a better communicator? And it just really opened this door to kind of understanding business problems and business-minded people that aren't creative.
Yeah.
Because I feel like over the years, I've just really dialed in and I drilled all these just practices of being a really great designer. But now, that came a little bit more naturally to me. But now I was like, okay, now I need to understand business. I need to understand strategy. I need to understand problem solving and communication, and how to become a leader. And so yeah, that's kind of, it took me down that rabbit hole of like, how can I merge these two? And it sort of just opened this door to making things easier, but also this world that I didn't really know I would fall into, because now I've shifted away from doing as much. I still do a lot of the design myself, obviously, but really kind of starting before I dive into what it looks like, by understanding like what the problem is that we're trying to solve. And ultimately that helps the client a lot quicker, helps myself with having to do so much guesswork and really understand like what they're trying to accomplish, and then helping them articulate the language that they're trying to use to communicate what they're wanting. And ultimately gets to the result a lot quicker and a lot more effective than if it were to me just like making cool looking stuff without really a brief. So.
Right. And I imagine even for you, it's probably like more enjoyable, right? The process of being like, hey, like you're trusting me a little bit more, like you to like actually take you on a journey of like, this is what this is going to look like. Like, let me kind of have that like creative freedom to paint a story for you, rather than just like, here's an image you can go and use.
Yeah.
Like I picture it in like, I've like just a handful of like tattoos. And my favorite one is the one that I told the artist, just like, hey, just, this is the ballpark. I want you to just do it.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather you like put in your creative ability there and just like give me something cool.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's cool because somebody then like attaches to it more, loves it more. And I'm sure that, I guess that feels maybe the same way for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, yeah, it was cool just really diving into everything about brand is what I like, my passion is. So yeah, like I think the way to approach that is from a, strategic approach. And, if you go on my LinkedIn, my title is brand obsessionist. And
Nice.
because brand strategist or graphic designer or any of these other kind of usual terms, it just never really felt like that's not all I do. And brand obsessionist just kind of came out of that, where it's like I literally in my free time I'm obsessing over every little thing about a brand, not just the visual. Like, I love the nitty gritty and the tangible, like packaging, or this logo is really sleek and it works on a bunch of ways, or this merchandise is cool. But ultimately, like, how are they talking to customers, their tone of voice, the experiences that they have? Because ultimately, I think it's with brand, it's a feeling that you have about something. And I think even in the design community, like the word brand or branding is usually thrown around as like a catch-all phrase.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it's started to frustrate me once I've kind of realized what the real definition is. And every time I hear people use it, I'm like, I don't know if you know what you think it means. And so that's been a thing that I'm like, how do I navigate that? Because I don't want to badger people with phrasing and the correct terminology, especially a client that doesn't really care. But ultimately, it's like I want to communicate the right thing and not get those wires crossed. So,
Yeah, man, that's awesome, dude. I'd love to hear like maybe like take us on a little bit of a journey of like, what was like the first project maybe that you really felt like, oh, I'm taking this beyond just like, okay, the usual. It's like, now I'm taking this person on like a branding journey, or maybe it's the first project you had, or maybe it's one that's been most significant to you. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So honestly, every client I've had, I've learned a new thing that I've tried to add on to my package that I deliver. I always try to over deliver than what was originally agreed upon, just to kind of overdo it in a good way. And so I guess the most significant one that I feel like I really got to do the full strategic approach was Mike and Mike's Desserts.
Which is incredible.
So if you haven't had them, they have officially launched into every Publix, selling vegan cupcakes, which is like a weird concept, because most of the time, at least personally, when I hear the word vegan, it usually doesn't taste very good, or it's lacking a lot of things to make it vegan. And somehow they were able to get this really great formula to make this really incredibly tasting dessert that, most cupcakes, they kind of have that like overly sugary, metallic-y aftertaste almost like hurts your teeth if you have one too many with the icing. And there's something about it. It's just light and it's fluffy. Dude, it's really good.
So good. Like we tried them, I think, for the first time a few months ago, and dude, it's our go-to now.
Yeah.
Like that's our like go-to like treat if we're going to Publix. We're like, oh, this is what we want to get. My son loves them too.
Yeah. They're super good. And I didn't realize they had the guy who invented the formula for the Red Lobster cheddar biscuit. He's the same guy that came up with this formula to make it functional for them. And so they were in a tough spot. They had a really great product, but they were still kind of lacking the vision of the company, who their target audience was, how to bridge that gap of explaining like their brand story of why they exist, why they're different than any other product out there in their market. And also visually, it didn't really fit up to par with public standards of being in a large grocery chain versus like at your local farmer's market. So I've known the founders there, Nate and Mike, for a while, and we've collaborated on some stuff like in youth group days and everything, and they've really like taken it to the next level with this project. And I was fortunate enough that they brought me on board to help them, and we did the full thing with strategy, uncovering their mission behind it. Mike's original story with how he was, selling cupcakes like door to door, driving to gas stations and random events to try to sell these cupcakes, his mom's recipe, and just kind of overcoming adversity and everything, and kind of believing in themselves to build their way up to now they're in every Publix and growing.
Dude, awesome.
And so it's a really cool story, and being a part of that was really fun. So we kind of align their target market. We help them clarify their voice, and that's something too, is like with a brand, it's not like a one and done thing. It's especially with an early company. It's something so I'm still currently working with them periodically to help refine their voice. The more that they grow and the more products that they launch, that it'll kind of shift of who they are and how we kind of hold on to that original story, but how do we, sell it in a way that's authentic to them and not trying to copy, these other big dessert companies or any other company, where they can still be themselves, but still be taken seriously and have, high quality.
For sure.
And all that stuff,
I'm sure that like consistency is like a key. Like I think about, I think about maybe some companies or some like brands that I've seen before that have taken like either the option of like they do like a hard right and just completely change and it's so noticeable.
Yeah. Or
Or you can just tell like, oh, nothing's consistent. Like it's just like, you know what I mean? I can never tell when like, it's this company. That's why I do appreciate like, obviously there's big ones out there like Nike and stuff like that, where it's like, if I see an ad, it's like, oh, I know that's a Nike ad from from like just looking at it.
Exactly.
But consistency, I'm sure, is like a big deal, right?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, to Nike's point, it's like they say just do it, but they never really explain what it is. But we all have some sort of sense of what it is. Like we kind of know. And, they're big enough, they've been around long enough that through advertising, they've developed that feeling of like, oh, I know what it is. I know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have our own definition. That's the thing, too, is like when you're building a brand, you're not just building one brand, you're building a brand in every single customer's eyes. They have their own interpretation of what that means. So if you can do a good job of consistently marketing and advertising and following through with your product and your trust and all that kind of stuff over and over and over again, you deliver this feeling of consistency that you get enough people believing the same feeling every time they interact with you. But if you're disjointed in certain areas, some people love you, some people hate you, and then one of those will start to take shape more than the other, and you'll either, rise above it or you'll crash. I mean, yeah, so.
Yeah. Well, I imagine like what's cool to see is so much of this is like, what I love about what you do is like so much of this is like centered around somebody's, like it seems like I can tell you're very concerned about someone's dream, right? Mm-hmm. Of like, how do we bring this dream, like of what this person is trying to do and make people see that through like the brand of like who they are, rather than just like, okay, here's a quick like fix, here's a quick something you can post out or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, is that kind of the first step for you, is like, hey, tell me about the dream, tell me about how this started? Is it just kind of understanding like how to get into this person's world of why they're wanting to do what they want to do?
Yeah. So honestly, I always try to, when I start out with a client, before we dive into visuals or language or marketing or any of that stuff, I really try to understand why they exist beyond just making money. I think every business is obvious, like you need to make money to thrive, but that's not going to get anybody to buy what you have because you want to make money. Mm-hmm. So I think bigger is selling a story, selling something that people resonate with, that they believe in, that it creates this feeling. No matter what it is, it might not have anything to do with your product specifically, but it creates this feeling of comfort or nostalgia or inclusiveness or whatever that is. I think everybody has something that they want to be a part of.
Yeah.
And I think that's just human nature, is that, we look to kind of gather with people like us and find, people that have similar interests, and that's, who we hang out with. That's, we have similar interests. So yeah, I really try to understand who they are and why they're doing what they're doing, and, why this business. Why wouldn't you do the same thing in this other company? Why cupcakes over pizza? Like what, why? So the more I can understand kind of the heart behind what they're doing, it'll kind of shape the rest of it. And then understanding who they are, who they hope to be, and then kind of aligning like, okay, is there a market for this? Who would be like your dream client for this client?
Yeah.
And then we kind of see, okay, what are they interested in specifically around your product? What do they like? What do they dislike? Okay, now we're authentic to who you are, and we really know who the client is that you're trying to reach. How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah.
And so it's almost like dating or
right,
anything.
yeah.
It's like, don't try to be someone else or just do what you think is the right answer. Like, just be who you want to be, and you feel confident
More
in that.
who you are.
And you'll find somebody that is also looking for that thing. Even if they're polar opposite of you, they might be, opposites attract. So I think just finding those two things and understanding how they align is like kind of the magic in it.
Yeah, for sure. And to that point too, I can imagine it's the same, like the dating scenario is like, if you try to be someone that you're not for a long time, eventually you're going to get found out.
People see right through that.
Yeah, people see right through it. It's easy to see that. So I imagine what's interesting to hear about what you do, like obviously I think that maybe one of the heavier lifts that people don't maybe realize, like obviously there's the work that gets done, right? Like the creating of images and those things like that.
Yeah.
But like the actual part that you have to do of then putting yourself into someone's dream and like learning that market, like, so you've learned their dream. That's kind of step one. Two is putting yourself into it. How do you do that?
Oh man. Yeah. I honestly don't know. I think, I would consider myself a pretty patient person and a pretty observant person. I'm naturally an introvert, so I'm totally fine with like, I can go out to a concert or a loud dinner and everything, but I need like 6 hours with a movie by myself, to recuperate. But yeah, I think I'm just really good at observing and picking up on the way people act and how they feel about things. So I think that kind of naturally has always kind of been in me. And just I lost my train of thought.
No, but
What was your question?
it's okay. Yeah, the real stuff. It's just like putting yourself into like that person's dream. I know maybe that's not even the best way to say it. That may be on me, but just like you've like heard what it is, and now it's like now the next step of me creating something is really putting myself into like this is what this person loves about whatever business they're building beyond money. Like now I'm building them out something.
Yeah, totally. So to that, it was really hard at first because, and I think this is true for a lot of creatives, is that we put so much of our heart and soul into like the work that we do that it's really hard not to take it personally if somebody doesn't like it.
Okay.
And that's how I reacted at first, is like, you don't know what you're talking about. And it took a little bit of molding in myself to really realize like it's not about me, it's about helping them achieve what they're trying to do. So they're leveraging my skill set. It's not about like me doing what I want to do, although I always do something that I like doing and that I want it to be good work and I do enjoy it. But at the end of the day, it's like if it doesn't solve their problem, then it's kind of a wasted effort. And I think that's the difference too between an artist and a designer. Is an artist, creates for themselves. This is how I feel, and I put this out into the world. And then if you interpret it a certain way, or if it resonates with you, then great. But I didn't make it for anybody else.
Yeah.
A designer is to take something and create it for others, to solve a problem. And so that's how I kind of view it. I think there is artistry in me, but I think at the end of the day, when my profession is like I'm a designer, and a strategist and a strategic thinker. So I think I've slowly had to kind of shift my mindset of taking my personal feelings out of it and thinking like, if they don't like something, it's because I didn't ask enough questions at the beginning.
Sure. Yeah.
I didn't do a good enough job of understanding their problem, and I never really put it on me anymore.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I feel like having that frame of reference, like that mindset is like allows you to not feel like you said, like, I don't feel bad when they don't love it. It's like, okay, well, maybe we need to ask a couple more questions to figure this out. It's not like they're saying, oh, your art sucks.
You suck.
It's just like, it maybe doesn't match up with what they have in their head. And to that, I feel like that's probably something that can like, I wonder how you work with people. Cause I know even for myself, sometimes like I have this general idea in my head, and I'm sure you've had people like that too, where it's like, this is their idea and what you're providing for them maybe doesn't match up the general idea in their head.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that to show them like, or even just draw out of them, okay, what is this general idea you have in your head? And let's try to find a middle ground.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like I'm pretty good at kind of putting my head in the clouds and dreaming, but I'm also a realist, I think, where I think really practically. I'm like, this would be sick, but there's no way we can make that happen. Or this is really cool, but I don't have, $40 million to make it actually realistic. So
there's a limit.
There is a limit. So I think kind of bridging that gap of like, how can we push the boundary of like getting you out of your comfort zone and make something really cool. And so the clients that are kind of all over the place that they might not really know what they want, I typically try not to work with. But I mean, to that point, there was a client I just had recently, and she was offering like way too many things. And it took a lot of conversations to really understand what she did and what she was wanting to do.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was frustrating, to be honest, because every time I thought I understood what she was going for, she would change her mind and say, no, that's not quite it. So just being patient and letting them, I even wanted to interject a bunch of time. We had a meeting. It was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting and it lasted 2 hours.
Yeah.
Just
Wow.
because I sat in it and just like, I would ask a question and I was like, there's just this awkward silence of just waiting. And all these feelings in me are wanting to just like interject and like reframe the question or give more suggestions on how to help her along. And I just kind of sat back and just like let her process it.
Yeah.
And in that, she kind of realized more in herself. And every time she said something that didn't make sense to me, I just said that. I was pretty direct and just like, I think this is what you're going for, but the way you frame this, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I think if it doesn't make sense to me and if it doesn't make sense to any of your friends or coworkers, I don't think any customers are going to really understand what you do either. So I helped her I said, let's just strip everything away and just said, what's the goal? Like, what are you trying to do? What is the purpose of you starting this business? And when she kind of got to the heart of it, I said, okay, to do that, I think out of the things you're providing, I said, you have 2 solid options. I said, all this other one is kind of like a sub spin-off that's, every couple months. It's not really consistent. I said, let's just cut that out. Let's just start from scratch and let's restructure how we present this and how we name things. She had like a different, strange name that kind of like meant something to her. But like, if I'm a customer, I was like, I have no idea what that means.
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't really know what you're selling. So we kind of stripped it down. I said, let's just use common language for now. And then as it develops, people start to realize what it is. We can kind of, customize that a little bit, but right now it's too confusing.
Yeah.
And in that, we kind of found a third revenue stream that she didn't even realize. She had this great venue that she only opened for certain events. And she mentioned in that meeting that she's like, I get people asking me all the time to like, if they can use the space for meetings and for conferences and all this stuff. And she would turn them down. And she's like, no, it's not for that. I said, that's like a passive, I mean, not fully passive, but very little work that you rent the space to them. And she loved it. So we ended up just through that session of just kind of back and forth and understanding her goals, kind of revealed this whole other revenue stream for her business that could help thrive the other things that she was wanting to do. And it cost really little effort to do.
Yeah.
So it's just stuff like that of just kind of, I try not to be overcomplicated with people. I think it's like Simon Sinek says, like, don't be afraid to be the dumbest person in the room. Just hey, like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't mean to be annoying or whatever, but could you like really dumb it down and just like re-explain that? And I think there's this kind of just nobility to that of just like being down to earth with people and just like people are people. And I'm not sure, I want to do a good job, but my goal isn't to impress you. It's to help you.
Yeah.
And so,
right. I'm sure there's like a better way to say this, but there's just something natural about like our human nature that it's almost just whether it's to speed through conversation or just to get to the next point. It's like to say like, oh yeah, I gotcha. When really you don't, like we do that. I can't imagine like how many times I do that throughout the day, just unknowingly.
Yeah.
And it is great. Like that's something I use in my personal job too, as well, is just to be able to point out the obvious or maybe not so obvious sometimes of just like, hey, that didn't make sense. Let's like, it's not like a shame thing, but let's just think about that a little bit deeper together. Because it's going to ultimately like bless the both of us, right?
Totally.
I can tell with what you do, it is great that you are a patient person, because I'm sure it takes that to be like a brand like obsessionist, like you said, right? Then a brand like strategist or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Because I'm imagining it takes like it. I'm sure your ideal person to work with is someone who's willing to take the journey with you, not. Maybe in a way, not necessarily wanting you to jump on the journey with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In a sense of like, hey, like we trust you to like take us on like, hey, what do you think would be opening up? And here's our ideas and here's our dream. Instead of like you coming with a new revision. It's not what I had in my head. It's not what I had in my head. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is too, because a lot of people, you have a meeting and we talk through all the strategy and then it gets to the visual side of things and they have this idea of what they want. And we talk through it. I work on everything, and I come back and I present, what we've talked about. And that's another thing is I've been sure to document what they've said, so that we come back, and if they're just like, oh, I saw this really cool bus bench ad, or I saw this this banner, at my coffee shop that was like really cool. Like, what if we did something like that? And we're like, okay, well, remember, this is what we talked about.
Right.
These are the words you use to describe what we're going for. Those things you mentioned don't fit that.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a reassurance.
The bus ad may not fit.
And that's just a fleeting thing. You saw it in a moment, and that's okay if you appreciate it, you think it's cool, but for the long haul, for the longevity of your brand, I don't think it's going to fit.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's a great idea. I'm open to all ideas for sure, but most of the time it's not.
Yeah. Well, dude, I love this. And I think we could talk about this for like just hours too. There's so much to like partnering with someone who has a dream. Like even for me, like with the podcast is like having dreams. And I can understand that person too, where it's like you see something and you get excited because you're dreaming about like, oh man, what I have, this is what it could be. Yeah. And having someone like you to partner with that just helps, in a sense, like ground a little bit of like, hey, there's a long journey ahead. Yeah. Let's just continue to focus on the goal.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, like, man, whether it's the goal or what is the future for you? Like, what does that look like for Noble Goat of what you're doing?
Man, yeah. So I have something that is pretty new that I've just kind of been working through that I think is pretty exciting. I've talked to a few other people about it that are pretty well respected in running their own businesses. And because at the end of the day, it's like I want it to be cool and unique, but I want it to last, and I want to be smart about it. So that's something that it's still in the really early stages, so I don't think I can really mention what exactly it is yet. So maybe we'll come back and I can give an update of where that's at. But I think ultimately, like in the back of my head, I've always kind of longed for creating a really well-respected agency, something like Pentagram or Collins, if you've heard of them. They've done a lot of really great stuff with Coca-Cola, Nike, American Airlines, all that kind of stuff. So just to be able to have that kind of client list, I think has always just been a really cool dream, obviously.
Just a few companies you may or may not have heard of.
Just a few, yeah. So, just having a really well-respected agency that can put out really, top tier work, but have this kind of unique thing that's my own. And I think with this new idea that I'm working on, I think that could be that thing. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm still just trying to piece it together and manage, 2 kids and
for sure, man. Got a few things going on
at a time. And but,
well, dude, I obviously believe in you a ton. And then also just seeing some of the projects that you've been able to be a part of in the past are just, it's cool to see where you've taken, like even what you mentioned, like something like Mike and Mike's and where they were to what they are today. And you definitely had a big hand in that. Well, we do have like 1 more minute left. And with that minute, I want to kind of open up the floor to you. Like, maybe I don't know if it's an announcement for like Noble Goat or something that's coming up, or maybe just something encouraging for someone who's on a similar journey like you.
Man, yeah. Nothing super exciting for Noble Goat yet. Still just a lot of processes and everything. But I don't know. I guess just like an encouraging word. It's something that I've always have to remind myself too is just kind of not getting caught up in like the fame that everybody else is kind of going after. I know it might sound cliche and so many people talk about that, but I think with just this newer age of like the quickness of TikTok and YouTube and just seeing like, oh, there's another 21-year-old that's making $12,000 in passive income every month. Like how the heck? So it's, just kind of realizing most of that is garbage and not accurate.
Sure.
But it's really easy to get caught up and kind of do that comparison of like, what am I doing with my life? I'm wasting time. Which is kind of where I'm at, and just realizing, reminding myself that, mastery comes over time. And it's not, over, a quick, TikTok or something that just like that kind of blew up. I mean, I think it's those late nights of really, making sure the kerning is just right between the letters and making sure like this is in alignment with who they are as a brand and how is, how our client's going to respond to that, or customers going to respond to that. And, I think it just takes a lot of time and that's okay. It's just to kind of, sit in the process and not worry that you're not going quick enough.
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest
encouragement
that I have. Yeah.
I love that, man. No, it is. It's what you said is so true. I believe that it is like the stuff that you do when no one's looking, whether it's for your dream or for your work or whatever the case may be, that is maybe different from like what you're saying, like the 12-year-old who's a millionaire from TikTok now.
Yeah.
Like maybe, I don't know the
Hawk Tuah
person.
girl.
Jeez. Yeah.
I heard she's like quitting her job and moving to LA and
She
selling
got
merchandise
famous really quick, dude.
for a 6-second
dude.
joke.
But the thing about that is like for that kind of stuff, it's like, how long will that really last? You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what comes back to your point.
Popular,
Yeah.
But there's no substance. There's nothing.
Exactly.
That's gonna last.
It's like,
yeah.
and you know, for those people don't like wish whatever. It's like, man, if this works for you and this becomes your thing, like go crush it for a long time.
For sure.
But I just have what I feel like I've seen, and maybe this is why you're doing the same thing because you've seen it too, is the people who work hard and consistent and maybe it takes a little bit longer are the things that are grow into something great and last for a long time.
Totally. Yeah.
Like for a while in my life, I remember I was comparing myself to people, and then I had to get to a point where I'm like, all these people that I'm comparing myself to are like 40s, 50s, 60s. Like, dude, I'm in my 30s. Like, I need to give myself a break.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure like the company you were talking about that does like Nike and all these guys, like they have had a few more years. They've been around a while.
Yeah.
And so it's like you grow into that for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, dude, how can people find you? If they want to learn a little bit more about Noble Goat, or maybe even just reach out and have some questions, how would they do that?
Yeah, you can check out my website and see the work we've done at noblegoatdesign.com. You can hit me up on Instagram, noblegoatdesign. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the easiest way to get in touch. Or you can email me. I check my email every day more than texting or anything. It's just Gordon at noblegoatdesign.com. Not just Gordon, it's Gordon.
Gordon, just to be more specific. Yeah, Gordon, Gordon. Yeah. Well, awesome, man, dude. Thank you so much for being on the show. And we'll have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, hey, as we're getting close to the holiday season, it's time to start thinking about family photos. And if you're wanting to get family photos done in the Central Florida area, look no further than Drip and Grace. Drip and Grace is an empowerment brand that cultivates environments where you feel seen, known, and loved. Through the photography platform they have, they remind you that your story matters and they capture it beautifully. Be on the lookout for some incredible deals that are coming out for the fall and winter portrait sessions. And if you're interested, you can book your sessions by heading over to their website at dripandgrace.com or reach out to them at their Instagram handle, dripingracephoto, and you'll be glad that you did.